Welcome to Doc Trailers, your source for information on documentary films. Today, I'm going to be interviewing Michael Ford Journalism Award-winning director Paul Steinbroner about his new film, Recovery Café. Let's check out the trailer.
Each and every one of you walk through these doors today into a space that's about recovery support, about helping each other grow.
Recovery Café is a community of belonging, healing, of becoming. It's a place where women and men who are so often ignored and not valued are given loving attention and valued. It's a place where people come back to life. People who have come to think of themselves as nothing but an addict or nothing but a person who's mentally ill, or just think of themselves in very negative terms, come to know that they are not only loved and valued, but they have this source of love within them, and their lives are part of the healing of others.
Everyone here is viewed as being a spiritual being who is going through a human experience.
We're gonna greet somebody with so much love and respect.
We have radical hospitality, period. So it's gonna be scary to someone that comes in because we're gonna greet somebody like we know them.
I wish that there was a recovery cafe on every corner.
Best thing I ever did, even if it was on accident. I stay in recovery.
I believe this is a community where all of us remind each other every day in 1,000 different ways that we do belong to each other. And boy, that is joy. That's joy. To know you belong to a people, that's joy.
What's heavy behind?
Oh, we've got to go through that whole process of really doing this officially, huh? I'm going to just keep it like this. I'm not going to edit anything out because I think it's just better that way.
Oh, we should edit this part out.
Oh, we don't edit anything out. No jump cuts. We don't do jump cuts. Jump cuts are absolutely illegal. We can't do them.
Okay, so we'll start right now.
We'll start right now. So introduce yourself, Paul.
I'm Paul Steinbroner, longtime documentary producer, distributor, and in May of 2017, started making another documentary about Recovery Café. I had a master plan of taking different recovery elements all throughout the West Coast and turning it into a feature. And in time, they all broke away. So instead of having one, I had 6. And I'm just finishing the final one in the series, and it's called Recovery Café. And I've been going and returning to this cafe and filming with the staff and some of the members in the staff, because it's a membership organization. It's essentially for people who have.
Oh, hold on a second. You're saying Recovery Cafe. Are we talking a coffee shop? Are we talking a restaurant that has a bar that serves, pancakes and waffles and hash browns? I mean, is this a Waffle House? I don't get it. Explain Recovery Cafe.
Okay, Recovery Cafe is a place of belonging and becoming. It has the essence, the feeling of a really nice coffee shop. They serve food. There's really good coffee there. But it's really for people who have hit the street hard, or it's a membership organization, first of all. You have to be alcohol drug free for at least 24 hours. And they have these things called recovery circles. You have to participate in that once a week. You have to show up for your circle and you get assigned a group. And then you have to give back. You know, there might be assignments like taking the trash out or cleaning down the bathrooms or doing something. And then also you have to be, and this happens over time, be emotionally available, be vulnerable, share with your people. And it's a place where people can really grow. So it's for folks that they just got out of treatment. They're struggling because they can't hang out with their old friends. Their relatives don't trust them anymore. Or they have a place that they can go and be there. It's usually opened about 5 days a week. They serve really good food. And then there's other activities there too, like yoga or writing program or music programs or art programs or all kinds of things to tease out somebody's best traits and to give them a platform to be able to grow and become who they were supposed to be.
Okay. Okay. You said membership. I mean, is it, and I'm, not being flippant or sarcastic here, but is this fee based, or, I mean, who funds it?
I think it's funded through donations by nonprofits. And the fee base is not, it's $100 membership a year. It's the fee base is you show up and you be honest. And that's it. You show up and you're not sullen and not angry, but giving and being part of a community.
All right. I get that. That's absolutely excellent. So I guess my question is, how does it compare to a 12-step program?
Well, they even have 12-step in that. But the difference is after a 12-step meeting, you go away, you go back, it's a 1-hour meeting, whereas this is more of a relationship. You're part of something. You're part of this group, Recovery Café, and people like support you. They listen, they care. It's really community. And in the long run, after all the films that I made, I'm seeing the through line is connection and community are the opposite of addiction. You have your people, and you show up. If you have a relapse, you can, of course, come back and you can share what you learned, but it's a consistent relationship which helps you to grow and change and modify your behavior and learn from other people. So while there is the opportunity for 12-step meetings at Recovery Café, they're not mandatory. And the recovery group is more like an accountability group. People who are going to know you over a period of time. And, the buy-in is you have to be transparent.
Cool. So let me ask you this. As one of the authors of this giant tomb of a book, Uppers, Downers, and All-Arounders. That was a book, right? Or was that an actual film?
Well, it started as a film. And then we had so many interviews that eventually we wanted to deconstruct it. And we just turned it into, all kinds of chapters related to neuropharmacology, brain chemistry, history, alcohol, depressants, psychedelics, treatment. It separated. It started as about 12-chapter book in 1989, and by the last edition, which is the 8th edition in 2014 it was released. It had over 600 pages with the citations and 10 chapters. And
Wow,
it was really well loved. People really loved it.
absolutely amazing. So when did that book get started?
Probably started in about 89. Essentially what we did is we took the transcripts from all the interviews. And so if we were talking about brain chemistry, or we were talking about cocaine or something, we would lay out the science part of it, and then we would bring in the voice, and the voice would be the person that we filmed. So rather than it be, too science-based, and it needed to be science-based, but then we brought it down to the human level, and interjected the people that have been suffering with this and had the insight, you know what I mean?
Sure.
So that was the beauty of interviewing these people, as they took not blame and not shame, but they took total responsibility. They could see how they'd been in this process. And so the whole book was really dedicated about people changing their lives.
Wow. So here's my question, so that I get the background of the book. Now, drugs in the 70s and 80s, marijuana, cocaine kicks in, we start getting into heroin kicking in. Today, the drugs are much different. Are they is meth more addictive than, say, heroin and coke?
Well,
I'll get you to why I'm asking this question. It's a formative question, but go ahead and see if you can give that a shout.
Well, first of all, there's always been a pattern of substituting. So even back in the 60s, heroin dealers were sneaking strychnine into the heroin because they were using it to cut. So there's always been this counterfeiting thing, you know what I mean? I once heard a story of somebody who sold several kilos of heroin. Actually, it turned out to be Aunt Jemima's pancake mix. And they walked off. They had this whole elaborate ruse. So it's always something, but the people that bought that weren't going to go hungry. On the other hand, where we're at now is the substitute drug is fentanyl, and fentanyl is measured in grains. Grains of this will kill somebody. So it's a cheap substitute. It is a drug. And now they're including that drug, which is an opioid, with Xylon. I'm trying to remember the name of this exactly, but it is a animal tranquilizer, so it's a sedative. And drugs are processed by the liver. And when a drug is introduced into the body, say it's alcohol, the liver enzymes start working on that specific toxin. If another one is introduced, it's not going to be able to effectively metabolize that second drug, which creates what's called synergism. So 1 and 1 is 3. So now if you have this animal tranquilizer mixed with fentanyl and you've been drinking, it's the liver is not capable of keeping up with it, and doesn't break down the drug sufficiently, which of course leads to overdoses. And of course, now we've hit a new high. 107,000 people have died in 1 year from overdose. Much of it is because of fentanyl. So are drugs more addictive? Drugs have always been addictive. I think it has to do with concentration. The concentration of the drug and the amount that people are taking.
So like fentanyl, what was it originally developed for?
An anesthetic.
So surgical procedures.
surgical procedures, you know, major wounds, burns, you know, it's also used somewhat in childbirth, but anesthetic drug.
Okay,
And
so
meant to be short term.
all right. Um, who's okay? So there's pharmaceutical companies making this for surgical use. Who's making this for street use?
Oh, well, there's precursor chemicals that come out of China and they are sent to Mexico. And then probably the Sinaloa and the Jalisco cartels. And then they formulate it, and they're putting it into all kinds of pill form. And then probably on this side of the border, it's being added to heroin. And of course, in terms of the bulk, it's not very bulky. I mean, you know, a kilo of fentanyl is probably enough to kill every opiate addict in Seattle. Whereas to keep them satisfied, if it was heroin, it would take kilos and kilos and kilos. So it's extremely potent, and that's the problem. I mean, there's no standard dose.
All right, so this is definitely a very evil drug. Is there any possibility of stopping the distribution of it, especially into the United States from Mexico and from China? I know when marijuana was grown in Mexico back in the 70s, they used to spray it with, I believe paraquat would go down the plains, would spray it, and then the drugs would come into the United States and people would get sick from it. Are we getting any closer to stopping the distribution patterns of illicit drugs?
Not likely, because there's so much money in it. And part of it is an American problem, a diplomatic problem. So we don't have strong enough diplomatic relationships that we could lean on China to say, could you stop this? I mean, okay, we could not agree, but can we agree on this? And then the problem with Mexico is they live right next to one of the biggest drug consuming nations in the country. And so they're there to supply the need. And then the other part of it is we're supplying them with weapons. So there's only one place in Mexico to buy a weapon, and it's outside of Mexico City or in Mexico City. And on the other hand, it's the country's flooded with drugs because you have people buying lots of weapons in Texas and then bringing them across the border. So it's doubly our problem. The National Rifle Association and the people that make those arms are marketing them specifically. They have brands that really appeal to people in Mexico, and so they're being illegally purchased and brought. And then, of course, the narcotraficantes basically can outgun the police. So it's problematic. It's all about, as ever, I mean, like ending slavery. You know, some would say it's like, oh my gosh, it's the largest moral problem we've ever had. And somebody said, well, it's good for our business model. Wow, really? Is that all we're talking about? You know? So, yeah.
Well, it's absolutely a crazy situation. And I don't, in talking to you, I don't see a resolution of how this can work. I mean, Nancy Reagan tried the Just Say No campaign, and I think that didn't work, but she was trying to stop the people from buying it because they probably couldn't find a way to stop the distribution.
Well, that's it. It's a, demand. It's a demand problem. If there was no demand, there would be no supply. And as long as there's demand, and so the best way to do it is people who have been to treatment and had those problems, if they don't, I guess you could say infect others or go back and use again, that really cuts it down, because it may take someone to reach an addictive point, what they call it a substance use disorder, where their loss of control is, they'll do anything. It's a problem that can only be addressed by the disinterest in using it.
So there are people who are users and people who aren't. Is it genetic? Does it go back in the history of my father was an alcoholic and now I'm an alcoholic because of genetic predisposition?
Huge genetic predisposition and stuff like that. So someone who is never been exposed and doesn't have the genes could become an addict, could have a problem, but that has to do with a couple of aspects. If they start using over a period of time, they could develop that. The other thing is people who have had traumatic incidents, people who have had no exposure at all, and not in their genetics either, and then they get exposed to it during a period of time when their life is really stressed out, especially trauma, emotional, physical, sexual violence, other forms of, like trauma from war. Then they can just take it up. But then there's the other factor, we have some Irish genes that we share, Bob, and there's some factor there that lies dormant, and once it's exposed, or the life that you grow into, it's like, oh, we always drink, and then we drink when we're sad, and we drink when we're happy, and then in between we drink, you know what I mean? Those genes are passed down. There's another version of it, the Native American version, 10,000 years without exposure to alcohol, and then add the trauma. Oh my God. That is 5 train wrecks happening at the same time. So yeah, there is something, and I made a whole film about this. It was called Roots of Addiction. And maybe we should, we'll just put it on. We'll put Roots of Addiction on this site, and people can see it for a limited period of time.
Cool. So you brought up the indigenous, you brought up the Irish, two populations that have suffered a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, a lot of alcoholism. How does someone with those roots and backgrounds, who has a chemmed up problem, they walk into Recovery Cafe? I mean, I see this as a very, very difficult thing to stop being a user. How does Recovery Cafe benefit them? Do they bond with other people?
I mean, by the time, you hit the full humility and say, I just can't live this way, or I'm going to die, and you find some reason for hope, or it's just too isolating. That's the other thing. It's too isolating. You come there and you go, wow, they treat me really nice. People are treating me nice. It's pretty normal. I show up, they know my name. They make me feel good about myself. I feel good about myself. I feel good about you. It just starts to, the emphasis shifts over time from my life is so lousy and I feel crappy all the time to how are you? how are you doing today? Hey, can I help you? What's going on? You know what I mean? It shifts. I guess a lot of people say something bigger than myself. You know,
So is someone ever truly recovered?
well, being a person of pallor, look at that Irish skin. I can say, yeah,
Fluorescent.
you know, boy, I sure love being in the sun. Yeah, well, that's nice. But the sun doesn't care, and you can get skin cancer. So you're always susceptible every day. It's like, oh, I put on my sunscreen every summer. It's like it's fall and it's really bright, and I'm going to go out without my sunscreen. It's like, you know what? You may be seeing your dermatologist again soon. So it's like you're never recovered. You know, you just have better tools to deal with your situation right now.
Okay. So I got to interrupt you. You brought up skin cancer and being, Irish, probably, runners, bikers. We don't have a chance in hell of not getting skin cancer. We got to be really careful. However, I just need to tell you this because the conspiracy theories are just rampant these days, that one of my relations put a post out that there is no such thing as skin cancer, and it was a phrase devised by the healthcare companies and the pharmaceuticals to say we need to sell these cancer drugs to cure people of skin cancer, but skin cancer doesn't exist. I just saw that. I had to pass it by. Being
all the
Irish and Northern Irish and Southern Irish, and
all the old paranoid things. Yes, well, it's not true. It's not true. And when you start to get it, it can be resolved quickly. But denial is not a defense against this, and it doesn't care what you think.
But isn't denial a river in Egypt?
Yeah, I hear it's drying up.
Let's go back to Recovery Cafe. Let's talk about how many years did it take you to really, from inception to trailer? How many years?
Okay, well, like almost 6.
Oh, jeez.
The reason it took 6 is because it was one of the 6 films that I was working on. I was making a film at Homeboy. I was making a film at Bet Teshuva, which is a kibbutz rehab center run by a rabbi and his wife. I was making a film called Just Us in New Mexico, and Richard Rohr was involved in this. And I was visiting these people on an Indian reservation, and it was just surrounded by narcotraficantes that are selling, fentanyl and heroin and meth. And then, I was working with the veterans in San Diego, and I was working with the Native American people that were working in recovery in the Pacific Northwest on the film Journeys of the Red Road. So it was just one of the many. And with every group, I learned new things, but they all have so much in common. So, I started with Recovery Café. It was not terribly far from where I live. And then I had to finish the other films. I got into distribution. COVID happened. And then I went, I almost have enough to finish this, but not quite. So I went back and spoke to some people there. And I've just been dropping in and getting a few more pickup shots and reviewing it with them, and it's been an adventure. So probably by the time it's done, it's 6 years. But if I just had focused it into all one, I could have done it maybe in under a year.
Okay, so as a filmmaker, are you a behind the camera guy? Are you a director, editor, producer? Give us your roles.
Oh yeah, name it. I take out the trash and write the checks too. Do the driving. I'm the chauffeur, go get the food, pay the parking fines, rent the equipment. And once in a while, I'm able to like work with other people, and I really prefer working on a team. I do have my buddy from film school at San Francisco State. We went on an extended trip. We started in Northern California, drove all the way to New Mexico, Colorado, and then we were back, and then we drove up and down the coast, and we ended up in Seattle. So I just love it when I can work with somebody else. Just so much better because
Collaboration is always a key. Really,
oh,
really helpful. Get to bounce
yeah,
different ideas.
yeah. I love the conviviality of it. It's all about the camaraderie, and then all these films in this set are all about community, right? And then I go back to the editing room, and I'm all by myself. It's like, oh my gosh, I want to be with them. You know what I mean? So I'm all in on finishing this film and doing a great job. And they have a beautiful model, and it really lifts the fog in a lot of people's lives. And it's really a simple model. And from what I've seen, highly effective. And when we started Recovery Cafe, there was like maybe 4 of them. And there's only supposed to be one. And people kept coming to them and saying, can we do this? Can we copy your model? How are you doing this? And then even during the COVID years, people kept coming to them in the midst of the worst of the worst. And now there's like over 10 of them in Indiana.
That's crazy. How many are there nationwide?
I think with the ones that are current and the ones that are coming on, about 50.
That happens when you don't turn your phone off. How many are there nationwide? Hold on. I've got, let me cancel this. I got to turn this off. Shut it down.
Is that a distributor who wants to pay us like
good luck with that. Okay, how many are there nationwide?
I think there's like currently about 50. Some of them are in the process of becoming a Recovery Cafe, and
amazing.
And then they are in a cohort, so they're always helping each other learn things. And how do you deal with this? And how do you deal with that? And what about this? But the mission remains the same, is to work with people who have been marginalized. So because once you've lost everything and you've reached that humility, you know the value. You can come to know the value of what is really valuable. You know what I mean? Having lost everything, then you go, wow, what's important? So the wisdom that comes out of this is just phenomenal. People can really change and grow and improve, and it's helped. And in the people that volunteer, they get as much out of it as anyone. And there's a woman who's been volunteering. She's a doctor. Her children died in an airplane accident. She was completely out of it, and slowly she came back. And her mother had been an artist, and she found that working with mosaics really helped a lot, relieved a lot of the dismal feelings that that people have, and helped them reconnect and help them talk, and just kind of rehabilitated them in terms of being able to be present and converse. So there's a lot of things, yoga, just being present. I mean, I think that's it, because with trauma, out of nowhere, it just parachutes into your life and just takes over. So to find ways to abate, the helplessness of it is critically important. And just to stabilize people in a relationship that they can count on. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And the relationship is with the cafe. I mean, not all the people there are 100% okay, but you can find your people just like anywhere. But I mean, if you're just walking the streets and don't have a place to go to the bathroom, or anybody to talk to, or everybody's out to get me, and all this other stuff that comes with being in a tough place, it's just it's refreshing to see something so kind.
So positive, so healthy. Great to hear about this. Well, when's the film coming out? Do you have a lock date?
I'm trying to get it done, by May, but I'm not sure if I'm going to make it by that time. I've got some animation that is coming in, and I'd like to say I know exactly when it's coming in, but it's coming in soon. And I have some music adventures that I'm trying to negotiate with rights.
Let me ask you about that. So when I edit, I always edit to music. I have music on in the background because it's all a beat. And to me, editing is a beat as well. I've got to have a storyline, but man, I want those edits on beats so that it really gets into the viewer's brain that this is rhythmatic. Do you edit to music? I mean, tell me about that.
I used to be a drummer. So yeah, I mean, I like cutting to music a lot, and it really does help. And it also gives me the opportunity to think about those grace notes and those arpeggios, those pauses that are really important, because my worst trend is just like thing to thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. It's like, no, people can't absorb it, and it's also no fun. So to let it breathe is really important. And yes, I do really like cutting to music. All these other films that I worked with, I got music rights or found natural music as part of it in the choir at Bet Teshuva. They had just all this beautiful original music that I had access to. Native American film Journeys on the Red Road had quite a bit of drumming and chanting. It just kind of like allows you to focus and center on, I'm asking the audience, just be here now. Just be here. Listen to the music. And then, then you can get the flow, because that's what's influencing the people. It has a huge effect on the people that are in the documentaries.
Cool. Well, we're going to take a commercial break. Great to talk to you, Paul. Thanks for joining us today. And join our YouTube site, subscribe to it, Doc Trailers. Thank you, everyone.
All right.